Well, I'm Eric Evans and I belong to the Queensland Society of Model Experimental Engineers. Have done now for 51 years. I've been in the club now.
Are you an original member?
No, the club started in 1932. 5 members started the club in 1932. The last of our original members, Chris George, who was a member of this club here right up until he died. Oh, it'll be 15 years ago, I suppose. He died now, something like that.
I'm going to ask you, what loco are you running today?
Well, I'm not. Normally I've brought out the model of the sugarcane locomotive that I was running yesterday, and I had intended running it again today. But seeing as I've got this darn flu, I don't feel like doing anything much, but it'll be available to some of my mates if they want to have a drive back and get it out and run it. But it's a model of the North Queensland cane loco from Babinda Sugar Mill, just south of Cairns. The latest one I'm building is another cane locomotive from South Johnson Mill in North Queensland. It's almost finished, should be finished by the end of the year.
Many challenges?
Challenges in building these things is one, initially to try and get hold of drawings so that you can get the correct scale of the thing and make it right to what the original locomotive was. So that's the biggest challenge. And of course these days we've got a problem getting castings done. There's so few foundries around now. The councils and these clean air mobs have closed all our foundries down. So you've got to go into states quite often now to get castings done, which is a bit of a pain.
But what I hear is that it's not usually running straight according to plans. You have to make adaptations on your own to make the scale model actually work. Have you had to do that?
Sometimes when building these things, yes, you have to make a few changes to suit available materials, and some parts that are very, very small and difficult to get working, you have to enlarge them very slightly just to make them work. But as close as possible we try and stick to the original design, and that's the thing that blokes win prizes for with locomotives. They build them exactly to scale, everything, and they're the prize winning locomotives. I've tended to try and keep them fairly scale, but also make them a good working engine.
Some of the guys said they've just worked from photos. Have you managed to do this, or have you had to do this, not managed?
I haven't worked from photographs to build a locomotive. I've usually relied on getting drawings of a locomotive that appeals to me, but we've had blokes in various clubs around the place work from photographs, or one of our members who died recently bought a HO gauge model of the loco he liked and just scaled it up and had no drawings. It's just that sat on his bench and he measured it and multiplied it by to end up with his locomotive, and it's an absolutely beautiful locomotive.
I'd like to ask you about the loco. I hear you built the one at the Currumbin Wildlife Centre. How did it go also?
Years ago, Jim Jackson built the steam locomotive and one of the diesel locomotives that runs at Currumbin. And then later on, where they found the availability of diesel locos was preferable to the time it takes to prepare a steam locomotive, they built a second one. A fitter that worked down there did the basics of making the chassis, and I made the hydraulic drive bogies and stuff like that for them to fit into that new diesel. And when that one was going, then we rebuilt the original diesel, and I built the bogies for that one as well on the new hydraulic drive system that is in it. It's one of those things that technology was to benefit when Jim built the original diesel, he used the best that was available in hydraulic drives for that sort of thing at the time. But then 20 years later, things advanced so much that the modern hydraulics was the way to go in the thing, so we replaced it all and brought it up to the latest technology at the time. It's probably outdated too now. I've built quite a few locos in my time. The first locomotive I built was in 1970. Since then I've built 17 locomotives in various gauges, from 5-inch gauge up to 12-inch gauge locomotives that I built for Warnervale Railway down in New South Wales. They're all half-size cane locos that are down there. So yeah, I've had a little bit of experience with them, but of course I was doing it as a job when I built those locomotives. Hobby locomotives, there were probably 5 or 6 that I built for myself, sort of thing. Sold a couple of them over the years.
That actually was going to be my next question. What is your background to build trains?
I started off, I did an apprenticeship as a fitter and turner at Lysarts at Port Kembla. I left there, joined the Air Force and did aero engine mechanics in the Air Force. Then had a couple of years of flying. And then got out and I ran a service station in Townsville for a year or two. When I came to Brisbane, I worked at Commonwealth Engineering for 18 months, overhauling steam locomotives in those days, and got involved in the earth moving business, and then started my own engineering shop, and sort of worked on my own since then. But I've always had an interest in trains as such. I can remember as about an 8-year-old making trains cut out of cardboard and dragging them around the floor. So it's sort of always been a bit of a thing there. It's what I don't know what sort of a bench you've got to have to be involved in these things, but that's what happens. Well, I like to get involved in building the locomotives. I enjoy driving them, but I think most of my pleasure comes out of building them and having a successful model when it's finished that does run well. I think that gives me the most satisfaction. And of course now, as I'm getting a little long in the tooth and the legs aren't so flexible, sitting on these little things driving is starting to be a bit uncomfortable, so I'm getting more pleasure out of building them now than I had before. In among all the locos that I've built, I think the BB80 1/4 that I've got up here in the roundhouse, it was the longest one in construction because it was the one that I concentrated on mostly to build to scale. Being a well-known Queensland engine, it had to be right, because as you've probably seen in these sort of club activities, there's so many experts around that know the engine back to front and how many times it got painted in its life and that sort of thing, that you can't take shortcuts. So it took me 8.5 years of combined spare time, and when I was running my business, if I had a quiet week, well, I could put a week on the locomotive, but it took me 8.5 years to build that one. I did all of it because that was the first BB8 1/4 built, so I made all the patterns for it to start with, acquired drawings from the railways to work to, and worked out all the scales, and so that took a bit of time before we actually sort of put a hacksaw into a bit of metal, and so it's the longest one.